Hi there guys, it's Jamie again, and I'm going to be running you through your fourth installment of the Android tutorial series. So the first thing we're going to do is start up Android Studio while I just recap and cover what we're going to be doing in this session. So previously what we did was we created an activity, we did some default styling to the layout by adding a few text views and things like that, and showing some functionality of how we can interact with UI elements. And also briefly looked at the Android manifest and how that works and some of the things that we need to look out for in the Android manifest. So basically what we're going to be doing today is we'll be looking at adding a resource, loading that resource via XML, and this is basically going to be part of a package. We're going to be making a splash screen for our activity, and the splash screen is going to be designed fully in XML, and we'll do some implementation inside the Java class to make it a little bit more dynamic and things like that. So first off, what we're going to do is we're going to need a background image. So in this case we have just a nice gradient. You can use anything for your background image. It needs to be dropped inside your drawable folder. Now in this case I've dropped it in the HDPI. Now we briefly covered some of the resource folders, but it's very important to know what these do. So you get a different drawable folder for each resolution size. Now what you can see here is that I've dropped it in the HDPI. This isn't what you should do for each project. We're basically saying there that the only resolution that we can provide of background is HDPI. So you might think, well, that's not a problem, because that means if someone boots up a high definition device, they'll be fine. And that's true. However, if a user loads up a small phone or a small resolution based phone, they're going to load a full high-resolution image into memory, which they didn't really need to do. So if we had provided a scaled image for them, or a lower resolution image for them, and dropped it in our low DPI or the MDPI folder, what we would have found is that the image would have been more optimized for lower scale devices. And it's very, very important in your project architecture to spend time developing resources targeting different resolution sizes. It's very, very important to do that. But in this case what we're going to do is we're going to just drop the background in there, because it's just easier for us to just quickly go through this example. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come into our design and we are going to add a background. Now this is just done by simply adding Android background, and then we do @drawable, and you can see it's already resolving some of this for us. And then of course we've called it background, so you can see it even suggests this, and you can see straight away in the design that it goes to a blue background. Fantastic. So looking at our design, we've got our basic splash screen. We're going to add some more text views to this in a minute, but we're going to jump into the Java now just to look at how we can implement the functionality. So what we're going to do here, and this has some expectation on you as programmers to understand threading enough that you understand what we're trying to achieve here and how it's going to be achieved. Now threading, if you don't know about it, is one of the fundamental concepts of parallel computing. There's not really any point in me covering this in depth, because it's something that you need to sort of understand later down the line if you do take up serious programming, to understand how threading works and how it fits into processing and things like that. So I'm not really going to cover that. There are many guides and explanations about processes and threads and how they fit together, so just go ahead and look that up if you have any issues with it. But for this example it's going to be nice and simple. We're just going to make a thread. So we do this by doing thread, and then of course just doing a normal variable declaration. We do thread start, we'll just call it start timer or something like that. That'll be fine for the moment. And then we instantiate it as a new thread, and so we drop down here, add a semicolon. Okay, so inside here thread's going to be expecting run as a public void, and it's definitely not going to be expecting square brackets. It's going to be expecting curly brackets. Let's give us those. And first thing you're going to notice when we leave this is it should give us a warning about not being declared. In this case it doesn't really look like it is, I'm not too sure why, but we're going to implement some of the exception. So what we're going to do is we're going to catch an interrupted exception. This is just in case this particular thread was interrupted, and if we do get that, we're going to have a complaint here. Okay, so we don't actually need this. That's fantastic. I would have thought we would have needed that. Apparently we're not. So we'll have start timer dot start. Sorry, start timer dot run. Okay, so what we're going to do in here is we are going to sleep for 5 seconds. Okay, so now this is actually going to need a try catch because we're doing a sleeper operation on the thread. So basically what we're doing here is we're just going to wait for 5 seconds before executing our next block of code, and the next block of code is going to come under here. So what we're going to do is have basically what the next step of this is we're going to show a little bit of navigation between activities. So the first thing that we're going to do here is we're going to instantiate a new intent. So we're going to have intent I and new, sorry, equals new intent, and then so can't resolve intent. Okay, now that's been imported, so we can make a new intent, and that will be based on this. Okay, and then we're going to be making a main activity.class, and it's going to complain. So right, okay, so basically what's happened here is because what we're looking for is the reference to this standard Java reference, but because we're inside a thread, we need to specify splash screen dot this. Okay, now that's going to work because basically we are inside a thread. We need to specify that we don't actually want the thread, we want the activity splash screen, and we want the context. So after this, what we're going to do is make a start activity. Okay, and then all we're going to do is just start our intent. Now, once we've done that, what we need to do is clean up this operation. So we're going to clean up this this activity, and we're just going to get rid of that. So if we start now, the expectation is that our splash screen would come on screen for 5 seconds. After that, it would start the activity, main activity, and then finish this activity. Let's just double check our manifest to make sure that it's all good. So what you're going to want to do here is remove this intent filter here, because we don't actually need main activity to be the main or launcher. It just needs to be a standard activity. So let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. Of course, we don't have an emulator running, so let's just go ahead and start Genie motion. So this I will resume when it started. Okay, fantastic. The emulator started up now, so what we'll do is we'll jump out of our application, and okay, so we're going to run it and see what happens. The expectation is that it should work straight off the bat, but programming being programming, it probably won't. So let's take a look. Alright, so the first thing that we can see is the background isn't being rendered. If we look at the logcat, let's just have a quick look, and preferably at our app. Okay, so it looks like the UI isn't being drawn. Now, okay, so this is definitely a good example of what I was saying with the different threads and how they interact with the UI. So what we've done here is we've made a typo, and we've actually run the public void run directly instead of running the thread on obviously on its own thread. So basically what's happened here is we've executed the logic in run on the UI thread, and the effect that has is basically that the UI thread's locked up, so it can't continue to render. So basically if we use the thread properly and we start the thread, what we should now expect is that the background should be rendered as the UI is allowed to keep working while the thread is sleeping in the background. We should now move to our activity, our next activity. Okay, great. So one thing that you will notice about this as well is if we press back, the old activity isn't there anymore. So basically this means that the old activity has been trashed. So as you can see, a little bit of splash activity. Okay, then we're into the main activity. So if we didn't have the finish here, what would happen is we've got the activity still behind it. So if we just run this, I'll give you an example. Okay, so we've got the splash screen. Then we've got the main activity. So if the user now presses back, they can go back to the splash screen. So this isn't what we want. So basically, we need the finish in there to make sure that the splash screen is a one-time use only for that application lifecycle. So we've basically, in this tutorial, what we've done is we've looked a little bit about the resourcing and how we manage having images based on the resolutions. We spoke a little bit about having a background and modifying our layout XML. We covered starting an activity and basically looking at intents and how we can work with those in different threads. We looked at sleeping the thread and explained a little bit about how the UI interacts with the threads and how we can lock up the UI and some of the issues that that can cause. So I hope this has been helpful so far. The next tutorial is going to take the application to the next step, but generally we're just going to move along nice and slowly along the app just to make sure that we're getting enough understanding to move on to a good thing. The idea is the end app that we're going to be looking at will be a networked application that will feed off a remote API and bring data into the application. So keep watching. I hope this has been helpful for you. If you want to grab me on Twitter, Google+, or email, feel free to do so. You can grab that information off my channel. I'm always happy to answer questions or anything like that. If there's any issues that you're having with the project, just give me a buzz on either of them. Twitter's probably the fastest. And as usual, the source code will be in the description. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I hope to see you in the next one.